like to do a reading?
Yes.
You can choose between the King James Version or the English version. I don't mind which. It's a psalm.
New English.
Okay. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Well, that was an interesting tour of the Sussex countryside, from Lewes to Haywards Heath, and then from Haywards Heath to here. Right. Welcome to you all at our last Sunday service of 2024. We come here again today to enter into a state of consciousness beyond the everyday, an altered state, a state of self-reflection, a state of global reflection, a state of detachment, a contemplative state, a state of stillness and calm, a state of reverence for life in all its forms and all its expressions, and a state of communion with the infinite. I was going to ask somebody to light the Fanny. Yes, Fanny, could you light the chalice, please? Chalice light. It's nice to have a proper light. At Lewes, we have to just switch on a torch or something because we're not allowed to have a light in the building where we meet. Thank you, Fanny. I've got more to do. As we move forward into a new year, the unfolding of which we cannot know, let us start by looking back at a couple of examples of our heritage. And by that I mean not just our Unitarian heritage, but our European Christian and secular heritage. Can everybody hear me well? Nobody's out of earshot. Good. The great German poet, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, put these words, roughly translated, into the mouth of his most famous character, Faust. Alas, two souls abide within my breast. The one strives to separate itself from the other. The one holds to a world with clutching limbs in coarse lust for life. The other lifts itself mightily from the dust to the sphere of high ancestral wisdom. Expressing a similar idea, the poet Alexander Pope wrote of the human condition. Placed on this isthmus of a middle state, a being darkly wise and rudely great, with too much knowledge for the skeptic side, with too much weakness for the stoic's pride. He hangs between in doubt to act or rest, in doubt to deem himself a god or beast, in doubt his mind or body to prefer. Born but to die and reasoning but to err, alike in ignorance his reason such, whether he thinks too much or too little. Chaos of thought and passion all confused, still by himself abused or disabused, created half to rise and half to fall. Great Lord of all things, yet a prey to all. Sole judge of truth, in endless error hurled. The glory, jest, and riddle of the world. That is what he says of humankind. The old Jewish law recognized the separation of the earth matters and the sacred by making the Sabbath, which means the day of rest, a holy day. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock. Listen to this tag. Or to the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Jesus indicated a similar idea when he commanded, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind and with all thy strength." This is the first and great commandment, he said, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. All of these texts contain the concept of duality. That is, of a worldly, that is mundane, and a spiritual side to our existence. Many now deny this dual nature of humanity, including, I have the impression, a good number of Unitarians. Let's see if there are reasons for retaining it. That is what this service will really be about. Our first hymn contains the phrase, "in this world and the next," from which I chose the title of today's service. What I have to say in the remainder of this service will make more sense if you change "in this world and the next" to "in this world and the realm of spirit." Our first hymn is number 19, "Now Thank We All Our God," in Hymns for Living. hands and voices, who wondrous things hath done, in whom the world rejoices, who from our mother's arms hath blessed us on our way with countless gifts of love, and still is ours today. Oh, may this bounteous God through all our life be near us, with ever joyful hearts, and blessed peace to cheer us, and keep us rich in grace, and guide us when perplexed, and free us from all ills in this world and the next. All praise and thanks to God in joyfulness be given, to whom we lift our hearts, who reigns in highest heaven, the one eternal God, whom earth and heaven adore, who was of old, is now, and shall be evermore. The composer Johann Sebastian Bach was particularly fond of that hymn and used it in quite a bit of his Passion music. I can't remember how many times, but quite a lot. Our first reading comes from the 3,000-year-old book of Psalms, which itself comes from the Ketuvim, or writings in the Hebrew Bible. Those who compiled the Christian Bible, as we know it, decided to include the Psalms, for which we may be grateful, if only because of their beauty as poetry. A commentary explains that Psalm 138 tells us that those who are close to God live in reality, and those who believe in human power live in a world of fantasy. This is, of course, the exact opposite of what is commonly believed in our largely secular society today. The concept of God is now widely considered as unreal, a figment of the imagination. This is now regarded as fantasy, and the belief in human power is considered to be real. Yet, for 3 millennia, this religious poetry has been revered, first by the Jews, and then in addition by Christians. In the Anglican Church, Psalm 138 is read at services at least once a month. Is it credible that such a text contains nothing of value? So, where are we? Yes, the reading, yeah. Jen will now read the psalm.
There are two options. Francis gave me the 2 options, so I've opted to go for the New English version. I will praise you, Lord, with all my heart. Before the gods, I will sing your praise. I will bow down toward your holy temple and will praise your name for your unfailing love and your faithfulness. For you have so exalted your solemn decree that it surpasses your fame. When I called, you answered me. You greatly emboldened me. May all the kings of the earth praise you, Lord, when they hear what you have decreed. May they sing of the ways of the Lord, for the glory of the Lord is great. Though the Lord is exalted, he looks kindly on the lowly. Though lofty, he sees them from afar. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand against the anger of my foes. With your right hand, you save me. The Lord will vindicate me. Your love, Lord, endures forever. Do not abandon the works of your hands.
Thank you very much, Jen. Our second hymn presents what gradually became the Unitarian view of God through the second half of the 19th century. The text was written by the transformative Unitarian minister and theologian James Martineau, who was, by the way, a French Huguenot by ancestry. Martineau probably saved Unitarianism from extinction, which is ironic because he was against the idea of a Unitarian denomination, promoting rather the merging of all Christian denominations. As a stepping stone in that direction, he preferred the description free Christian to Unitarian for congregations. And as you may know, this church was between 1875 and 1930 so labelled. Martineau opposed the earlier biblical Unitarianism, which lived on alongside his new view until the end of the 19th century, when both he and the Geordie Robert Spears, who led the biblical Unitarian movement, died within a year of each other in 1899 and 1900. The biblical Unitarians maintained that all the spiritual awareness one needed was included in the Bible, if divested by means of thorough textual analysis of text which didn't belong, and if the remainder were rightly interpreted. Martineau didn't accept that. It was he who led the way in seeing Scripture as essentially symbolic rather than literal. After the devastating blow to Christianity dealt by Charles Darwin, that seemed to many the only way forward, short of abandoning the religion pioneered by Jesus altogether. Spears and Martineau were towards the end of their lives largely reconciled, but while the future of Unitarianism followed Martineau, many free Christian churches and chapels reverted to calling themselves Unitarian, as indeed happened here in Brighton and also in Hastings, which I know quite a bit about. Curious kind of way these things go. Our second rather long reading comes from an extraterrestrial observer somewhere out there in the ether who has studied human life on Earth and believes his species could learn from the human fate. You're quite right. We missed a hymn. Sorry. Yes, hymn number 34. Where is your God? Indeed, where is your hymn? Right. So, hymn number 34. Yeah. secret way of visiting the lowly, not wrapped in moving cloud, or nightly resting far, but waiting in the thought of silent high desire. Come not in flashing storm, or bursting frown of thunder. Come in the viewless form of wakening love and wonder, to every waiting soul. Speak in thy still small voice, till broken love made whole, and saddened hearts rejoice. What would I do without my wife? Our second rather long reading, as I have said, comes from an extraterrestrial observer. And here goes. Many light years ago, there lived on the tiny planet Earth a species called human. This was so different from ours physically that I will only mention that its individual members were on average 160 times smaller than us, and that their chemical makeup was based around the element of carbon rather than silicon. I want to concentrate instead upon the human condition, for in this respect, humankind was remarkably similar to our species. Like us, humans had evolved in a way which distinguished them in their level of consciousness, imagination, and reasoning ability from all other living beings on Earth. Human societies, like ours, had evolved into great civilizations based around conceptions of the human condition and the challenges which these posed. Religions and philosophies wrestled with the question of how to deal with the human capacity for unbounded imagination, whether of pleasure or of pain, of grandeur or of lowliness, of exaltation or of terror, of wild dreams or of helpless submission. Art, in all its forms, literature, music, painting, sculpting, film, likewise strove to conceptualize symbolically the human condition and thereby to make it understandable and, most importantly, bearable. Like us, the exceptional human capacity to reason had produced remarkable achievements in the fields of engineering, of medical science, and of social and political organization. But at last, humans became arrogant and asserted, bizarrely, that they had taken control not only of their own destiny, but also of their own evolution. Religion, which for millennia had implied humility in the face of nature, was cast aside as just so much mumbo-jumbo, if not the tool of despots. Does all this ring a bell? Do we not wrestle with just the same issues on our planet? And have we not also become arrogant? Do we not also assert our independence from nature? And have we not also abandoned our time-honored religion? If the answer to these questions is yes, then perhaps we have something to learn from the fate of those distant earthlings. The idea of being rooted in nature was repellent to a majority of humans, for while there was much of beauty in the natural world, nature was also red in tooth and claw and devoid of morality. This new secular society was much concerned with moralizing. Failing to accept their rootedness in nature, however, humans ignored vital clues about how to survive. They came to believe that challenges such as war, climate change, social unrest, unhappiness, inequality, and frustration could all be resolved by rationally constructed systems. These included the use of military power to coerce those who refused to accept the new ideas. Human leaders attributed the problems of evil. Human leaders attributed problems to evil individuals or evil ideologies or evil classes, even rather than to original sin, as had previously been thought. It was believed that human nature itself was a construction by evil or misguided forces and could be reconstructed if necessary. If war resulted from aggressive instincts or the rivalries of nations and religions, for example, then aggressive instincts should be eliminated by social and genetic engineering. Likewise, nations and religions should be abolished. Nature and I've lost my place. Instead of engaging with the wisdom of the past, which had lived alongside nature and acknowledged its power, these modernizers saw the natural world as its enemy, or, which was perhaps worse, they sentimentalized it. They saw its beauty, but not its ugliness. As for tradition, they recognized only the failures of their ancestors. What those earthlings misunderstood was that their very conception of reality was the product of an imagination motivated by denial. It bore little relation to truth and none at all to the ultimate things of life. Each tribe came to believe it had a monopoly on wisdom and failed to use nature's gift of human imagination to cross tribal boundaries and understand others. A prophet had once commanded his followers to love their enemies, but this had long since been forgotten. Intelligence and imagination were, on the contrary, used destructively, with the inevitable result of earth-wide war and the destruction of both humankind and the ecosphere. Is this where we're going? Is this what we want? Could we instead learn from the earthling's fate and engage with the humility taught by religion in the future of nature, in the face of nature? Could we learn to work with it rather than against it? Could we accept that nature's redness in tooth and claw applies as much to us as to other species, and use our intelligence to grapple with the paradox rather than to ignore it? And there ends, as they used to say, the first lesson. Ritual is indispensable to religious practice, for through it we remind ourselves over and again of eternal truths. Unitarians have less of it than other Christian denominations, but the very act of coming together in a place of worship like this implies some ritual. We come now to such a practice which Unitarians have long exercised, in which we will contemplate some words of wisdom and then observe a couple of minutes of silence. Today we will hear a prayer by the well-known Unitarian minister Cliff Reed, which bears some resemblance to the psalm we heard earlier. Loving Spirit, you are with us at every moment in our lives. You are with us in the womb's warm darkness. You are with us in the rude shock of birth. You are with us in the childhood's Eden. In the turmoil of youth, you are with us. In the transition to adulthood and its duties. In the search for a life companion to share the journey. You are with us in the fearful responsibility of parenthood and in the letting go of our children as they grow. You are with us as we take our place among the elders of family and community. In the coming of the twilight, you are with us, and in the return to the great mystery. You are with us at every moment. You are with us in our worship here, now. Help us to know it. We will now be silent. Some believe that loving our neighbour is the essential element of Christianity, and we can forget the rest. In the hymn to William Blake's words, compassion for our fellow beings is beautifully expressed. So we will sing hymn number 181, Can I See Another's Woe? Know thyself proclaims an inscription on the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. To understand ourselves, we need three things, at least three things: detachment, honesty, and a listener. These conditions have traditionally been fulfilled by a relationship to a loving, supreme, all-seeing, all-knowing, all-present being of the kind envisaged in Cliff Reed's prayer. Whether this supreme being, God, is symbolic or imaginary may be irrelevant. The act of engaging with God amounts to a process of introspection, or as Burns put it, seeing ourselves as others see us. When we read a novel, or watch a play, or a drama on television, or a film, the narrator or the actors do not constantly remind us that what we are reading or seeing and hearing is unreal. We know that perfectly well. But at the same time, we suspend our awareness and enter into a state of engagement with characters presented. I, for example, have come to know the people portrayed in the Downton Abbey series. And if I were to meet their actors in real life, I would initially relate to them as the characters they portray. Is this irrational? Is this irrational? If so, it seems to me a desirable form of irrationality and resembles that of those who believe in the biblical stories. Hasn't our view of nature become central to our understanding of ourselves? And the human Hasn't our view of nature become central to understanding ourselves and the human condition since Darwin's Darwin conclusively showed us that if we were creatures of God, then we were no more so than the rest of life on Earth. This leads us to an interesting reflection. Unitarians have in the last half-century come to reject the notion of sin, and particularly of original sin. No doubt the concept of human fallibility has in the past been abused. But have we not thrown out the baby with the bathwater? Viewing ourselves as imperfectible, in opposition to Rousseau's view of the noble savage, has great value, for it says essentially that both individually and collectively, we are creatures of nature and struggle to survive by whatever means comes to hand. From this standpoint, loving, or at least understanding our enemies, should become more achievable. How would it be, for example, to imagine and understand Putin or a Hamas fighter, as well as, of course, as Zelensky and Netanyahu, whom we hear far more about? Even if total security is an illusion, how much safer the world might be if we did just that. In our second reading, which was, I confess, written by the terrestrial standing before you, we took the long view of Christian decadence. That extraterrestrial attributed this to human arrogance in overvaluing reason, undervaluing tradition, and rejecting, or at least sentimentalizing, nature. However, there were other factors as well. Christianity was perceived as morbid. All that going on about a doubtless holy man being crucified was unhealthy. If you wanted a comfortable religion, however, Christianity wasn't it. Even Christmas had a sinister undertone with the massacre of the innocents. And then there was the discomfort at our imperial past, and in particular, its missionary activity. Also, we yearned novelty, for the old faith felt passé, like old-fashioned clothes. Other faiths, therefore, attracted our attention, though they were rarely fully understood. Some converted. Others were in favor of a pick and mix faith, but ABC, anything but Christianity. And then there was the perceived anti-Semitism of Christianity because of its representation of the crucifixion, particularly in St. John's Gospel. Few want to risk being caught in the wide net cast out to catch anti-Semites. For all of these reasons, to declare oneself a Christian nowadays feels in some circles like admitting to being a paedophile. People glare at you, or at least their eyes glaze over the moment you mention Christian faith, or indeed religion in general. That is, of course, unless you are speaking pejoratively. The conversation breaks off uncomfortably, and soon you are shunned like a pariah. The biblical command to love neighbors may be acknowledged, but not if they have silly ideas. Many have accordingly funneled their energies into good works in this world, like into caring for the unfortunate and campaigning on their behalf. William Blake's poem extols such compassion, which is in no way to be denigrated. But what about loving God? And what about loving our enemies? Neither of these seem high on anyone's agenda anymore. And have we Unitarians been only too willing to go with the flow? I'm afraid we also join in, loving to hate our enemies, and often with little knowledge about them. Let's come back to William Blake, whose message was more complex than I represented it above. He was not only a poet, but also a remarkable artist. He painted the picture on the back of your orders of service, in which heaven and earth are portrayed. God is mediating between them. Symbolically, does this not represent the notion of an almighty, all-seeing, omnipresent, parental being, real or imagined, through whom we can understand ourselves and our place in the universe? And despite all the objections to Christianity, isn't there still life in that ancient conception of a God whom we can love with all our heart and with all our soul and with all our mind and with all our strength, and in whom we can confide without fear of the consequences? Our last hymn brings us back to some much-needed optimism as we launch into the new year. Hymn number 3, The Joy of Living. Sing the joy of living, we sing the mystery of knowledge, love, and science, of truth that is to be, of searching, doubting, testing, of deeper insights gained, of freedom claimed and honor, of life that are unchained. We sing the joy of living, we sing of harmony, of textures, sounds, and colors, to touch, to hear, to see, of order, rhythm, meaning, of chaos and of strife, of richness of sensation, of the creating life. We sing the joy of living, we sing of ecstasy, of warmth, of love, of passion, of flights of fantasy. We sing the joy of living, the dear, the lone, the strange, the moving, pulsing, throbbing, the universe of change. Before finishing, let's hear some poetry by Philip Larkin, an outspoken and irreverent atheist, who, however, surprised himself by stopping as he passed an ancient Yorkshire church on his bike. Yet stop I did. In fact, I often do, and always end much at a loss like this, wondering what to look for, wondering too, when churches fall completely out of use, what we shall turn them into. A serious house on serious earth it is, in whose blent air all our compulsions meet, are recognized and robed as destinies. And that much never can be obsolete, since someone will forever be surprising a hunger in himself to be more serious, and gravitating with it to this ground, which he once heard was proper to grow wise in, if only that so many dead lie round. And now may the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of the divine, and guide us in all our ways. Thank you, Zoe. And I wish you all a happy new year. Have we got term notices?
Thank you so much, Francis, for that,
You're going up in smoke.
Yeah, thought-provoking service. Thank you very much. Thank you, Zoe. Is this your first time with us? No, done it before. Yeah. Oh, okay. I haven't seen you before. Thank you so much. Thank you to Simon, who's gone out to make our tea and coffee. To Pete for stepping in and doing the setting up. Thank you. Okay. We didn't have the collection during the service, but please, if you can, give generously. Cash there, and we do have our card reader over there with instructions, so it would be much appreciated to keep this church standing and flourishing. Sadly, Stuart Deeks is unwell, so there won't be an irregular choir session after the service today, which is a shame, but we wish him well. And now during the week, Susie, I'm not sure if Wednesday... Yes. So, yeah, so the church won't be open for music and quiet reflection. I wouldn't, no, not as it's New Year's Day. So, yeah, you can have a day off. And no Friday lunchtime concert either. They'll be back in full flood on the 10th, Friday the 10th. Yeah, with a lovely programme for the rest of the winter and for spring. And next Sunday, our service will be led by our member and committee member, John Naish. Always interesting, so please come along to that next Sunday. So, yeah, now it's tea and coffee time. Please stay, join us for chat, conversation. Thank you. Oh, Susie, oh. Just stretching.
Sorry, Carl.